Hi, I'm Hal Roberts. This is Bridge City News. Here's some of the top stories we've been following. As premiers meet in Halifax to discuss political issues, many are telling the Trudeau government to stay in its lane. Political columnist Brian Lilly says the Trudeau government needs to end its negative rhetoric and comparing Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre to Donald Trump. And the Israel Defense Forces have taken out another Hamas brigade commander. TBN Israel's Yair Pinto will have the latest.
Your nation, your province, your southern Alberta. From the heart of Lethbridge, it's Bridge City News with Hal Roberts.
Thanks so much for joining us. A clear message has been sent by Canada's premiers to Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. They're telling the PM to stay in his own lane. All 15 premiers are gathering in Halifax for their summer meeting to discuss political issues such as the cost of living, the state of Canada's infrastructure, along with looming questions about the Canada-US relationship. The meetings are being hosted by Nova Scotia Premier Tim Houston and will run through Wednesday. BC Premier David Eby says Ottawa needs to focus more on federal jurisdiction matters.
The school lunch program, great. But what about these core areas of federal responsibility? And that's the frustration for me, is we talk with British Columbians every day about what these challenges look like for them when the federal government's not doing that core work that they should be doing. And for me, that's what that message is about, is like, if your lane's in great shape, come on over and help us with ours. But that's just not the case in British Columbia.
Now, ahead of the meetings, Nova Scotia Premier Houston sent Trudeau a letter asking him to do a better job engaging with the premiers and to refrain from unilateral actions in areas of provincial and territorial jurisdiction, particularly in the areas of healthcare, education, and housing. The Alberta and BC governments have reached an agreement that will allow wineries in both provinces to sell directly to consumers in each province. Officials say the deal will establish a bilateral working group focused on facilitating access to BC wines electronically. Premier Daniel Smith says Alberta's privatized liquor industry means Albertans have one of the largest selections of liquor products in Canada, and this agreement will give wine lovers in our province an even wider variety of wine to choose from.
Alberta's government has long been an advocate for reducing red tape and removing barriers to interprovincial trade, and together with BC, we are doing both. I'm happy to say that we have reached an agreement to allow wineries in each province to sell directly to consumers in the other one. Albertans will once again be able to order wine from British Columbia producers and have it shipped to their homes, and buyers in BC can do the same with new and growing Alberta wineries. So this means more consumer choice, more market access for businesses, more growth and prosperity for Albertans and British Columbians. And the agreement also means that we can ensure consistent charges are applied to all wine sold in Alberta.
Political reporter Brian Lilly says the premiers who are meeting in Halifax are really not that happy with the Trudeau government. He says all 15 are essentially telling Ottawa to stay off their lawns.
Look, we don't want any more surprises in federal budgets where you are coming into our jurisdiction. We saw the fight recently between Alberta Premier Daniel Smith and the federal government over the dental program. And she said, look, if you want to do a dental program, back the one that already exists. By the way, that's the message from almost all the premiers, because they all have a dental program of some sort that is far less onerous and cumbersome and bureaucratic for the dentists than the one that the Liberals invented.
Mr. Lilly will also discuss how the negative rhetoric of the Trudeau government comparing Pierre Poilievre to Donald Trump needs to end. He'll explain later in our show coming up after Business News. As you've heard on Bridge City News, Donald Trump has chosen his running mate leading up to the U.S. election in November. It is Ohio Senator J.D. Vance. So what do we know about this 39-year-old man who could potentially become the next vice president of the United States? Lisa Daftari is an American political correspondent and one of our regular contributors here on BCN. She says there's a lot more to Vance than meets the eye.
He is quite experienced. He was elected to Ohio Senate only in 2022, so he hasn't even finished his first term yet, but he comes to the table with a lot of other things. He was in the Marine Corps. He actually was a press officer in the Marine Corps, so he has experience not only in the military, but obviously with media, with journalists. I think that actually will help him a lot if he is elected to the vice presidency. He comes from a very diverse background, diverse in the sense that he represents the America that Donald Trump has been able to capture the hearts and minds of, which explains a lot, right? He actually wrote a book about his upbringing, Hillbilly Elegy, which is just a very successful book, a movie that explained to the world the popularity of Donald Trump. Now, what's interesting, Hal, is that JD was not always a fan of Donald Trump. He actually was on record criticizing him, saying that he would never vote for him, actually even comparing him to Hitler, unfortunately. But he talks about this evolution, that he came to understand this MAGA movement, to understand that while Donald Trump was in office, how influential he was, how effective he was, and that he agreed with a lot of the policies, that he actually hadn't given Donald Trump a chance. And for that reason, he became a big advocate of the MAGA movement, especially when he was running for office in Ohio as well. In terms of background, he grew up in Kentucky and Ohio, went to law school at Yale, would make any mama proud to have JD as their son.
That was American political correspondent Lisa Daftari joining us from Los Angeles. The Israeli military is going to start sending draft notices to Jewish ultra-Orthodox men following a landmark order by the country's Supreme Court that the long-standing political arrangement was discriminatory. As the war with Hamas rages on, resentment has been growing that ultra-Orthodox men were exempt from the draft, which is compulsory for most Jewish men. The announcement could lead to unrest and rattle Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's government, which relies on the support of ultra-Orthodox parties opposed to any changes to the system. The Israeli Defense Forces say they have eliminated a Hamas Khan Yunis brigade commander. TBN Israel correspondent Yair Pinto has the details.
The IDF issued a statement confirming that Brigadier General Rafah Salma, the commander of the Khan Yunis division, was eliminated in the strike, while the fate of Hamas Chief of Staff Mohammed Deif is still unclear. Elsewhere, the IDF eliminated terrorists who were about to take over humanitarian aid in Rafah, and the IDF also revealed further details about the tunnel network it has discovered running under the Philadelphia corridor. On the northern front, the IDF attacked positions of the Iranian-backed terrorist organization Hezbollah in southern Lebanon and continues to prepare for the possibility of a full-scale war on this front.
Well, a heat warning is back on for our region here in southwestern Alberta. We're experiencing temperatures 30 degrees or higher for most of the week here in Lethbridge. Jeanette Rocher is now with a quick peek at the forecast. Jeanette, we may, however, see a bit of a reprieve as there's a chance of some showers developing.
Yes, possibly towards the end of the work week, Hal. By Thursday, we should be seeing those 60% a chance of showers. But it doesn't take away from the fact that it's still going to be a 30-degree day as we are in this prolonged heat event right now. So over the next 8 to 10 days, we are going to be seeing a relatively above higher than seasonal temperatures. So we're seeing temperatures ranging from 28 up to 34 degrees. Tomorrow, Wednesday, no exception, jumping to 34 from today's 32 degrees. Could see the chance of a thunderstorm late in the day tomorrow as well. And with those overnight temperatures remaining at a low of 16 degrees, still relatively warm throughout the evening. Pretty good camping weather, if you ask me. I'll be back later in the show, Hal, with that full look at the forecast across the nation.
Great. Thanks so much, Jeanette. More than 167,000 customers are without power in Toronto as heavy rain continues to pummel the GTA. The flooding has washed out highway lanes and flooded subway and train stations. A lot of the streets, sidewalks, and other infrastructure is also underwater. Environment Canada says Torontonians should expect another 125 millimeters of rain to fall over the next 24 hours. The Ontario Provincial Police are advising drivers to slow down and use extreme caution while the highways in and around Toronto are still underwater. The last time Toronto saw a storm like this was back in 2013, when flooding caused close to $1 billion worth of damage. Canada's Crown Indigenous Relations Minister has apologized to 9 First Nations in Manitoba and Saskatchewan following decades of the Dakota and Lakota being labeled as refugees. Gary Anandasangaree said the group should have been formally recognized as First Nations in Canada. The apology was met with cheers from the crowd of more than 650 people at a ceremony in Saskatoon. The Dakota and Lakota, who've held land in Canada and the United States, have long had a strong presence here in the country. 1 month after the St. Mary's siphon suffered a catastrophic failure in Montana, the U.S. Bureau of Reclamation has recommended a full replacement of the project rather than bringing in any temporary measures. The initial project consisted of 2 sets of siphons that diverted water from the St. Mary River to the Milk River, bringing in irrigation water to southern Alberta. Now, since the failure, water levels in the Milk River have dwindled to less than half a cubic meter per second of water, while the St. Mary River has seen an increased flow. Full replacement of both sets of siphons are estimated at around $70 million US and are expected to be completed by September of next year. Lethbridge Polytechnic, formerly known as Lethbridge College, is introducing new certificates that will specialize in primary care, general arts, and science and trades. The primary care paramedic program was previously in partnership with the Northern Alberta Institute of Technology in Edmonton, but now it'll run independently. The 2 schools, however, will remain close partners in curriculum sharing updates. In trades, several pre-employment programs have transitioned to certification programs, including pre-carpenter and pre-electrician. Additionally, the Centre of Business, Arts and Sciences will bring in 3 new one-year certificate programs.
These are for students that might not be associated with someone to sponsor their apprenticeship yet. They're not employed. They're testing it out. They're not 100% sure if this is for them. So this gives them an entry-level opportunity, right, to get the skills here, the theoretical training, and then go off, do some work, integrated learning opportunities, and then find an employer, and then hopefully you come back as an apprentice.
The first intake in most of the listed programs is available this fall, with primary care paramedic open for January 2025 and kinesiology for the fall of 2025. The folks at Canadian Blood Services say they need more donations. Their group in Lethbridge receives hundreds of plasma donations each and every week, but even more is needed. BCN's Heidi Echevarria has that story.
Heroes come in many shapes and sizes, whether they are first responders, those who serve in our military, or those who help give the gift of life. These heroes help save lives through blood, plasma, or even organ donations. Brent King, a 72 years old, is one of several donors who frequently gives a part of himself to save others.
I have no idea who's getting the benefits of the donation, and I'm not concerned about it. It's they need it, or else they wouldn't be getting it. I feel good about doing it, just internally. It's not physically, it doesn't hurt. It's not a pain for me to make the donation. I've got the time, so it's a small amount of time, and it does my heart good.
While the nurses and plasma team get to work, Brenna Scott explains the easy way to donate.
People come in to donate plasma, very similar to donating whole blood. They'll be greeted at the door. They'll do a short questionnaire that goes over any health conditions they have, as well as any medications there are. They'll go through this questionnaire with a plasma associate in one of our screening rooms, and then we'll get you on the donor bed. Once you're on the donor bed, it takes about 25 to 40 minutes to donate plasma, and then right after you're done, you'll sit for 5 minutes, make sure you're feeling okay, you'll grab some snacks, and then you'll go home feeling great knowing you helped save a life. You're able to donate plasma every 7 days, and your body actually regenerates plasma within 48 hours. So even if you donated every 7 days, it would be completely safe to do so. And we do have a lot of donors that come on a weekly or a bi-weekly basis. Technically, if you've donated whole blood, you have donated plasma, because plasma is 55% of your total blood volume. When you donate plasma, though, your blood comes out and it actually spins in a centrifuge beside the donor. It spins your plasma out of your blood. We collect the plasma, and then we give those red blood cells and platelets back to you, kind of like dialysis. So we do that back and forth process until we have a full plasma donation, and that's why it does take a little bit longer, so that 25 to kind of 40 minutes-ish. It's really important to donate because you're helping patients all across Canada. We have a number of patients that we've seen increase year over year of people that need both blood and plasma, and so we're really trying to make sure that those patients, they get to be home with their families, they get the donations they need. For example, if you need plasma, it could take over 100 donors a year to help with a lot of different conditions that we use plasma for. So that could be nervous system disorders, cancers, severe burns. A lot of different conditions really need plasma. even though right now we do have more donors than we did at this time last year, we are seeing a really steady increase a lot faster than anticipated. So we do really need more donors. Right now, it's 1 in 2 people are eligible to donate blood or plasma, but only 1 in every 76 actually do. And we have a lot of donors say, or people in the community say, you know what, no one's ever asked me. So this is us asking you, we do need your help. We would love to have you in as a new donor. So if you have an hour to spare, we would love to see you this summer.
Good health, a minimum weight of 110 pounds, and being 17 years of age or older are the requirements to donate. Scott says they need more donation all of the time. She says the minimum number of plasma donation must be 275 per week in Lethbridge and 10,000 a month across Canada. Like King and hundreds of donors, you too can be a hero. For Bridge City News, I'm Heidi Echavarria.
A heads up for drivers here in Lethbridge. The intersection at Stafford Drive North and 5th Avenue North is under construction over the next few days. Drivers will have to follow a temporary 4-way stop as traffic signals are turned off. Crews have shut down the eastbound lane on Tuesday and the westbound lane on Wednesday. The city is reminding drivers to please slow down and follow all signs. Work is expected to be completed by Thursday. A carnival-style event just for dads is being hosted by the Family Centre in Lethbridge this Friday. The Dads and Kids event is being held July 19th at Legacy Park in Lethbridge from 5 till 8 p.m. The event will feature carnival games, a barbecue, a spray park for the kids, and even the opportunity to try your hand at pickleball. The Family Centre's executive director says the event will help families build social connections. It is also designed to promote programming which fills a gap for fathers here in our community.
It's an event to be able to build those social connections, have an opportunity for children and their fathers or father figure to connect and also connect socially as well. There is a gap that we noticed with programming and connection and support for fathers being involved in their children's lives, which is a really key part of that social development, the building on the security of the child and the family unit. So Family Centre has created programs to be able to have more of that father involvement initiative. So we do have programs that are regular every Saturday at our Melcor downtown location, where fathers can come with their children and connect and build on those social skills for their children.
There are a limited number of spots open for Dads and Kids event on Friday. If you're interested, you're asked to call the Family Centre directly at 403-320-4232. A 10-year-old Saskatchewan girl who touched hearts with social media posts about her medical fight has died. Isabella Thompson was known around the world as Bella Brave. She was born with a mutation of 3 rare diseases that left her with no immune system. Her family says on Instagram that she has left a legacy here on earth, and now she's dancing on streets of gold. May God continue to comfort Bella's family right now. Well, God has been blessing us with some beautiful hot sunny days here in southwestern Alberta, and that trend will continue for the rest of the week. Full weather details are on deck. We had another heat warning from Environment Canada earlier today. Jeanette Rocher is now with all of the weather details. Jeanette, it is so hot, I may have to wait until about 9:30 tonight before I can take Dexter for a walk.
Yeah, well, is that for the dog or is that for you, Hal? I just gotta ask, I'm sorry. You can tell little Dexter that around 9:30, 10 o'clock tonight, it'll be a lovely 25 degrees, so it should be pretty nice for that walk. But bad news for Dexter. Over the next week, we are in that prolonged heat event, meaning that for the next 8 to 10 days, we are gonna be seeing temperatures hovering in the close to the mid-30s there. So as we're seeing into Wednesday, 34 degrees, down to 30 again on Thursday, but we are seeing that 60% a chance of showers, and then back up to 34 degrees on Friday, Saturday 35, and then 34 for both Sunday and Monday. So it is going to be scorching, definitely on the weekend. Average high for this time of year, 26. Average low, 10 degrees, 35. That was the record breaker on this day back in 1970. Who knows? We could see that again, possibly coming up this week. 1 degree was the record low on this day back in 1999. 5:42 is when the sun rose this morning. Sunset this evening at 9:32. So we're seeing exactly 15 hours and 50 minutes of daylight. As we get to the west coast tomorrow, seeing mainly clear skies for the most part. A bit bit of a wind in the Juan de Fuca Strait in the island there. 27 for a high there. Vancouver, 26. More like 28 to 29 as you go inland. Sunshine there as well. Now, there is that prolonged heat event across Alberta, including Edmonton and Calgary. So over the next 8 to 10 days, temperatures hovering in the 30s, 33 for a high in Edmonton. Could see a risk of a thunderstorm tomorrow evening. Calgary under a severe thunderstorm watch this evening. It should be ending late tonight, but high of 31 degrees tomorrow in Calgary with mainly clear skies. As we get to the rest of the prairies, we are seeing clear skies as well in Saskatoon and Regina, 28 and 27 in those cities respectively. 24 for a high tomorrow in Winnipeg, which is much more moderate, especially for this time of the year. Now, as we get to the central part of the country, Toronto, we're seeing 28 for a high. Could see a slight chance of showers with a risk of thunderstorms later in the day. Same thing for Ottawa with a high of 28. Montreal under a heat warning as well with high humidity, 28 for the high, and could see a bit of shower activity tomorrow as well. Now, as we get into Atlantic Canada, 3 of these cities right here, Fredericton, Halifax, Charlottetown, they're all sitting in a very high heat, high humidity situation. Should be carrying on right through Thursday anyway. 30 for a high in Fredericton. Tomorrow could see a slight chance of showers, risk of thunderstorms. 28 for the high in Halifax, 28 also in Charlottetown. Could see thunderstorms in Halifax. St. John looking at some showers tomorrow and a high of 23 there. So there you have it. That is your forecast.
Economists say the unexpected dip in the inflation rate in June could prompt the Bank of Canada to cut its key interest rate next week. The inflation rate fell from 2.9% in May to 2.7% last month, mostly because of slower year-over-year growth in gasoline prices. BMO macro strategist Benjamin Reitzes predicts it'll be a bit of a grind to reach the central bank's target of 2% and doesn't think it will hit that mark before mid to late 2025. The International Monetary Fund says global growth remains steady, but it is unimpressive by recent historical standards. It is still expecting the world economy to grow by a lackluster 3.2% this year. The 190-nation lending organization says worldwide progress against accelerating prices has been slowed by stickier than expected inflation for services, from airline travel to restaurant meals. Now, here's a look at today's markets.
The TSX was up 243 points on the day to finish at 22,995. The Dow was up 742 points to 40,954. The S&P 500 was up 35 to 5667, and the Nasdaq was up 36 points to finish at 18,509. West Texas Intermediate oil was down $1.02 to $80.89 US per barrel. Natural gas was down 16 cents to $2.17 US. Gold was up 42.26 to 24.6371 US an ounce, and silver was down 61 cents to $30.81 US an ounce. Feed wheat is at $7.53 per bushel. Barley is at $5.76. Canola is at $14.15, and corn is at $6.98 per bushel. Live cattle August contract was up 55 cents to 182.68. Feeder cattle August contract was down 15 cents to 258.63. Lean hogs were up 2.85 to 91.28, and the Canadian dollar was up slightly over the past 24 hours to 73.10 US.
Recapping one of our top stories, Canada's premiers are telling Prime Minister Justin Trudeau to stay in his own lane. All 15 premiers are gathering in Halifax for their summer meeting to discuss political issues such as the cost of living, the state of Canada's infrastructure, along with looming questions about the Canada-US relationship. Ahead of the meetings, Nova Scotia Premier Houston sent Trudeau a letter asking him to do a better job engaging with premiers and to refrain from unilateral actions in areas of provincial and territorial jurisdiction, particularly in healthcare, housing, and education. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau does need to end his constant negative rhetoric of comparing Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre to Donald Trump. Now, that's according to Sun political columnist Brian Lilley, who will explain why momentarily. When you see news happening in your community, be sure to drop us an email at info@bridgecitynews.ca. Also, be sure to visit our website anytime to check out a number of stories and interviews.
Here's today's Bridge City News community calendar. All are invited to attend the Town of Colehurst 2024 Miners' Days Parade, taking place Saturday, July 27th. Kicking off Parade Day at 8 a.m. is a free pancake breakfast at the Colehurst Community Center, with the parade beginning at 10:30 a.m. Enjoy beautifully decorated floats, classic cars, antique tractors, and cute animal displays. For more information, visit colehurst.ca. Do you have a heart to serve our community? The Lethbridge Soup Kitchen is looking for volunteers to help prepare, serve, and clean up after meals that are given every day. The Lethbridge Soup Kitchen's mission is to help alleviate the struggle of poverty for individuals and families who are poor, have very limited income, or just in need of a hot meal. They also desire to increase public awareness of the needs of the poor and homeless in Lethbridge. For more information and to volunteer, visit lethbridgesoupkitchen.ca. And that's today's Bridge City News community calendar.
In the wake of the assassination attempt of Donald Trump, Alberta Premier Daniel Smith is calling for progressives to look at their language, especially around the way conservative politicians are being described. Now, to chat about this in more detail, a Sun columnist, Brian Lilly, joins us once again from Toronto. Brian, it appears as though Smith is receiving heat, saying she used inflammatory language. But I mean, U.S. President Joe Biden is calling for Americans to turn down the temperature, even though there was an alleged post on social media by Biden saying that Trump should be put in the bullseye. Are we seeing similar things happening here in Canada?
He said that in a conference call with donors. He posted that to social media. He was asked about it in an interview with NBC's Lester Holt. I don't know if you saw this the other night. NBC had a sit-down interview. It went about as well as the George Stephanopoulos one went. And Biden was asked about saying, put Trump in a bullseye. And he said, well, but I didn't say crosshairs. I said bullseye, not crosshairs. There's a difference. Not really. And that's part of the problem. Look, Smith is right that we all need to look at the language that we're using and overheated rhetoric. And we should not be calling for people that you disagree with politically to be jailed or shot. Don't call people who, you just have a disagreement with traitors, things like that, which happens on all sides. But the progressive movement, be it in Canada or the United States, loves to stand up on a pedestal that they themselves have built for themselves and declare that they are pure, they are clean. And it's just those dastardly conservatives over there who won't stop saying nasty things. That's not reality, Hal. And we shouldn't accept that as reality. I can tell you, as a public figure who leans to the conservative side, the nasty things that I am sent on a daily basis. I can only imagine what it's like for someone like Danielle Smith or Pierre Poilievre or Doug Ford. It's even worse for conservative women. We always hear that, well, liberal women are being attacked. So are conservative women. And the misogyny comes out on top of all of that. And it can be incredibly nasty. You have to have an incredibly thick skin to deal with it. But that's you dealing with it personally. And then what about the rhetoric that down in the States, we saw Democrats compare Trump to Hitler repeatedly, to say that he was a threat to democracy, that he must be stopped, he cannot be president. And then someone tries to shoot him. And when conservatives say, well, we should maybe tone down the temperature, it becomes, well, no, you started it first. As soon as there is any shooter that they can link to a conservative point of view, it becomes, don't you know that words are violence and that rhetoric has consequences? And look at this person, look at that person. But they don't want it to go the other way. Danielle Smith is right, but it applies to all of us. And we all need to do our own political hygiene. We all need to watch our words, watch what our tongues say, and go forward in a spirit of goodwill. Look, we're talking about our fellow citizens, our fellow countrymen. They're wrong. They're not evil. I think that's an important point to remember.
Sometimes we just have to learn to agree to disagree, Brian, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau called Donald Trump after the shooting, as some are calling this diplomacy at its best. Now, you say Trudeau is not helping Canada in the event of a Trump victory in November. Why is that?
Because while he called Trump on Sunday, and kudos to him for that, the Prime Minister has been campaigning against Donald Trump for close to a year now. He doesn't campaign against Pierre Poilievre so much as he campaigns against Donald Trump. And what does he do? He uses language and rhetoric to paint Pierre Poilievre as if he is Donald Trump and that Donald Trump is wholly unacceptable to Canadian society and can't be tolerated, much like we can't tolerate certain people. You remember that famous Trudeau quote. So, can you think that the Liberal Party of Canada can put out video after video, social media post after social media post, email fundraiser after email fundraiser, denouncing Donald Trump, and Trump won't hear about it in some way, shape, or form? The guy is poised to become the next president of the United States. If we go until October 2025, that means 10 months of Trump and Trudeau being in office together at the same time. Is that going to go well for Canada? If Justin Trudeau has to ask Donald Trump for a favor for our country or to exclude Canada from some protectionist trade measure, do you think that's going to go well? It's not. And so, fine, he called him on Sunday. That's the humane thing to do. That's the right thing to do. How about you stop playing silly political games with our national interest and stop attacking your main political opponent by comparing them to someone in another country that you clearly don't like?
A lot of talk around the water cooler right now, Brian, is if Justin Trudeau will stay on or go as Prime Minister. Now, new poll shows his party still lags well behind the Conservatives. There's also bad news for those who hope to potentially replace Trudeau as Liberal Party leader.
Absolutely. Nobody knows who they are. This is an Abacus data poll. They did something interesting. Okay, so they did another national survey of where the voter support is. And nationally, it's a 20-point lead for Pierre Poilievre. And the Conservatives, 43 to 23%. That's 67% support for the Conservatives in Alberta, 47% support for the Conservatives in Ontario. These are massive majority numbers. But then the guys at Abacus Data decided, okay, do people actually know? If we show them a photo, do they know who this person is? Well, 98% knew who Justin Trudeau was. And the weird thing for me, Hal, is I want to know who the 2% of Canadians who've shown a photo of Justin Trudeau don't know who that is. This is a guy who was literally born into the palace. He was born while his father was prime minister. He's been in and out of the spotlight my entire lifetime. So how don't you know who he is? But they also showed that 1/3 of Canadians couldn't identify Pierre Poilievre. And Liberals, when that came out, they were having a field day with it. Oh, 1/3 of Canadians can't identify him. See, they don't really like him. They don't really want to vote for him. Then the numbers came out on the Liberal follow-ups for or replacements for Justin Trudeau. Only 39% could identify Chrystia Freeland, who's been in cabinet for almost 9 years, who's been finance minister and deputy prime minister for the last 4. Melanie Joly, only 20% could identify her, meaning 80% couldn't. Anita Anand, it was 19% could identify her. Sean Fraser, the housing minister, just 4% looked at a photo and said, oh, that's Sean Fraser. 4% for Dominic LeBlanc. Even Mark Carney, the Liberal golden boy, only 7% of people could say who he was, which means 93% had no clue. I think some of them looked at the photo and said, was he in Mad Men, or was he one of the 2 guys who played Darren on Bewitched back in the day? Like, he looks like he's out of central casting, but nobody knows who he is. So that's bad news for the Liberals writ large if they want to say that changing leaders will change their political fortunes.
Let's circle back to Pierre Poilievre for just a moment here, Brian. Now, he visited a Hindu temple in Toronto this week. He's also been visiting all kinds of places of worship as he tours the country right now. Now, you say, however, that it is only Poilievre's visit to evangelical churches that has stirred up some controversy?
Yeah, so it was about 2 weeks ago that he spent a Sunday going to 3 different evangelical churches in the Toronto area. And he was denounced by this for Liberals who thought it was abhorrent. Some said that evangelicals are a scourge on our nation's politics. It's not an invented quote. You can find it online or in my column. People said, well, he should have been going to Pride that day, but he went to these churches, and that's a real problem. Others compared it to him courting white Christian nationalists, and this is evil. One of the churches was in Markham, Ontario, a suburb of Toronto that is heavily Chinese. Guess what the congregation is? It's a heavily Chinese Christian evangelical church. Two of the churches were in Brampton. They are primarily or predominantly Black Christian evangelical churches. These are not white nationalists. This is not the fever dreams that liberals have. They act as if Pierre Poilievre going to these churches means that he's going to make The Handmaid's Tale reality instead of Margaret Atwood's fiction. And yet he can go to any mosque, gurdwara, Hindu temple, synagogue. It doesn't matter. It won't create controversy. Maybe a synagogue will in these days because of where the liberals are on the Israel-Hamas war. Maybe if he went to a Catholic church that was fairly conservative, he would create some problems. But there were no problems with his going to this Hindu temple, which, by the way, is magnificent and fantastic. And if you just love the architecture of places of worship, it's somewhere that you should go visit. But there was no controversy, nor should there be. But there also shouldn't be controversy of him going and speaking to evangelical Christians. But it is the bigotry of liberals and some of their allies in the media. This started, by the way, from a media story, which was completely fine from our old colleague, David Aiken, who just noted, like, look, this is interesting. The last couple of conservative leaders would not be seen or allow their photos to be posted on social media going to evangelical churches. Poilievre is not hiding it. That's of note. That's all Aiken said. Liberals took it over from there and made it into a controversy that didn't need to exist.
Wasn't there a similar message when the Trudeau, the Liberals, also blasted the Freedom Convoy and talking about Poilievre meeting with a lot of the racist truckers? A lot of those truckers were Indo-Canadians. A lot of them were Sikhs. And
they live detached from reality, where everyone they don't like is a racist. And I was up in Brampton the other day. Do you know how many guys I saw going past me with turbans? Like 2-3 guys in a pickup truck going by me, and they're all wearing turbans. And if you ask the average downtown Toronto liberal, they'd say, "Oh, those white good old boys in their pickup trucks." Get out of town once in a while. Yeah. Go see what the rest of the country's like.
Speaking of getting out of town, Canada's premiers are meeting in Halifax this week, Brian. Lots of items to discuss on the agenda, and some have described their message to Trudeau as, "Get off our lawn." Shaking the fist at the clock. Get off our lawn. Are the premiers telling the PMO to maybe stay in its own lane?
That is a big part of it, and I love that description. And I'm going to give credit to CBC. They're the ones that described it like that, and I decided I had to steal it. That's a perfect description of the letter that went out from the premiers, who right now it's chaired by Nova Scotia Premier Tim Houston. And they said, look, we don't want any more surprises in federal budgets where you are coming into our jurisdiction. We saw the fight recently between Alberta Premier Danielle Smith and the federal government over the dental program. And she said, look, if you want to do a dental program, back the one that already exists. By the way, that's the message from almost all the premiers, because they all have a dental program of some sort that is far less onerous and cumbersome and bureaucratic for the dentists than the one that the Liberals invented and which so many dentists have actually rejected. But whether it's dental care, childcare, all these things, the federal government acts as if it wants to be the province. And you'll notice, what don't they fund? The military. And thus we had the big NATO issue last week. They don't fund foreign affairs properly. Other than buying a $9 million condo for Tom Clark, the consul general in New York, they don't fund their own areas of jurisdiction, and yet they want to interfere in every other area. And the premiers are fed up, and they're trying to say, stay in your own lane. And just to give you an idea of why that matters, we've heard in every area of the country problems with the so-called $10 a day childcare system. It was never properly funded. Ontario was the last province to sign on to it, and they only did so after they watched all the other provinces, looked at the deals and said, there's a funding gap here. And so Ontario has a slightly better deal than Alberta and some of the others because they forced the issue, and they're still having problems compared to the other along with the other provinces because the feds didn't fund this properly. So they come into areas of provincial jurisdiction, they promise the moon, they deliver you not even a handful of stars, and then they tell you, you deal with it.
Now, Brian, speaking of a lot of funding, let's talk about the CBC for just a moment here. There are more calls from many Canadians to defund Canada's public broadcaster. especially after the CBC decided to give almost 1,200 of its executives taxpayer-funded bonuses, this despite a bunch of cuts, where a lot of jobs were lost by journalists here. And leading the charge to defund the CBC is CPC leader Pierre Poilievre.
This is one of Pierre Poilievre's most popular promises, and he has been making it for ages. I had some colleagues react as if, oh, is this new? No, he has been saying since the leadership campaign that he will defund the CBC. He has made it a regular point to put into his stump speech that he can't wait to, what's the phrase he uses? It warms his heart to think of the day when a family will pull up to the former CBC headquarters and turn the key into their affordable condo apartment that they've now got because he sold it off for affordable housing. That always gets huge cheers from the audience. It's got to be one of the most popular ones, but it's made easier by Catherine Tait, the CEO of CBC, who called on the carpet over bonuses at a time when the state broadcaster is laying off people and their ratings are in the toilet. She turns around and says, oh, no, these aren't bonuses. This is performance pay. We don't do bonuses. This is performance pay. A rose by any other name, how? And so they've got all these layoffs. They've got rotten ratings, and they still think they should give out bonuses. So they announced that. We don't know the total dollar value of the bonuses yet. That will come out eventually. The only thing that we can take as a sign of hope is that CBC decided that they would follow the public mood and say they will review their bonus situation. How you get bonuses when the only thing going up are their web hit numbers, which is not something a business they're supposed to be in, and everything else is going down, I have no idea. But then again, I don't live detached from reality like Catherine Tait apparently does.
Political columnist Brian Lilley, thanks so much for joining us from Toronto.
Thank you, Hal.
Well, if you just mention the phrase coal mining, it won't take very long to get some negative comments or even dirty looks coming your way. But is coal mining necessarily always a bad thing? Besides the cons, are there some pros? Well, today's guests are going to share an interesting perspective. Joining me today from the Crow's Nest Pass in southern Alberta are Carmen and Troy Linderman. Carmen is the Director of Citizens Supportive of Crow's Nest Pass. So welcome to Bridge City News, you two. Thanks so much for being here. Great to have you on today.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you. Absolutely. Okay, so maybe why don't we start off by having you give an overview of what your organization is about and what it's hoping to accomplish.
So we're a nonprofit organization that supports metallurgical coal mining in our area. We're made up of local citizens, and we think that with responsible mining and modern mining techniques that we can mine our resources responsibly, and our town could benefit from it. So we live in the area. We love the area. We wouldn't want to see anything bad happen to it. My grandkids swim in the rivers, and so yeah, we're supportive. We think we can do it responsibly.
Okay, interesting. So I believe you want viewers to understand that you're not planning on developing a whole new coal mine, right? But rather just restarting an abandoned coal mine?
Right. Grassy Mountain was abandoned about 60 years ago, and it never ever did get reclaimed. So our hopes is we can mine what's left of the met coal there. Met coal is used for making steel. And if we can do that responsibly, it will actually get reclaimed.
Okay. Well, I believe we have some drone footage of the actual abandoned coal mine, and I think that this might help viewers get a better idea of what the situation is out there, but maybe talk a little bit about Grassy Mine.
Yeah, so it's not pristine wilderness by no means. Like I say, it's an old coal mine, and it holds world class, some of the best metallurgical coal in the world, and if they mine it, the company that mines it is responsible for doing the reclamation, so it would get cleaned up. And then that land would become usable again.
Okay, and also this isn't a thermal coal mine. for use for fuel, right? But a metallurgical coal, like you said, to be used to produce steel. So why is this an important difference, Carmen?
There's two completely different uses for metallurgical coal, or steel-making coal is what it's commonly referred to as, and thermal coal. Thermal coal is used for fuel. It's used for generating power. Metallurgical coal, as Carmen has stated, is used for making steel. And one of the biggest differences is that with thermal coal, or energy producing coal, there's alternatives. There's natural gas, there's solar, there's wind power. For making steel, there really is no alternative. Metallurgical coal needs to be mixed with iron ore to create steel, and the demand for world steel is only going up, and the supply of metallurgical coal is going down. So you could see a problem coming. So we support this on those bases, and on the basis of the reclamation and the benefits to the community.
Okay, well, you spoke of benefits. So what are the benefits of a coal mine, to a community like the Crow's Nest Pass?
Well, I think it'll revitalize our community. It'll provide high-paying jobs, mortgage-paying jobs, which is really important. It'll provide our youth with opportunities for, like there's lots of things that go into a coal mine. It's not just truck drivers. So there's electricians, there's mechanics, environmentalists, there's, so it'll provide our youth and local and surrounding area with opportunities to have those jobs. It'll lower our taxes, and also it'll attract families to our community. We're a community of the elderly. So we have a lot of elderly folks here, and yeah, it would be nice to have our kids, a reason for our kids to stay.
Oh yeah, that's a good point. So how many jobs do you estimate this could bring to the pass, including spin-off jobs?
Well, I believe it'll be hundreds of jobs. So like I say, there's all sorts of different jobs that go in with mining, and then there's the service companies that you need, and vehicle rentals and fuel, and you want to expand?
I think one of the biggest pieces is the infrastructure needed to support something like this. It'll be a very big benefit to the Crow's Nest Pass to get that infrastructure, because currently I believe our infrastructure is lacking or is dated, and that in itself spins off jobs, and that infrastructure can be used for other industries as well, like tourism. So I think Carmen's correct. It will be in the hundreds. There'll be a construction phase, which will be hundreds for sure. And then once the mine starts operating, I think even in the mine itself will be close to 300. And then the spin-off jobs, like she stated.
Mm-hmm. And there will certainly be obviously some questions raised as to what kind of impact it will have on the water supply and carbon emissions. So how would you address those concerns?
So the government sets the standards on what's allowable, and anything outside those standards gets shut down, right? So they have to mine it responsibly. And, today we're global leaders in resource extraction in Canada, in Alberta, right? So it's better, like Troy was saying, we need the met coal. It's better that we get it from here versus somewhere else where they don't have those environmental standards. I read an article the other day about kids mining coal in Iran. It's heartbreaking, right? When you think about that, and the need for the met coal is it's there. It's going to come from somewhere. So why don't we do it where we can do it responsibly?
Yeah, it's true. And I think sometimes we forget that coal in Alberta is actually produced in an ethical manner, right, as compared to some of these other mining companies in other parts of the world. And like you said, where they use child labor in some of those instances, that is heartbreaking. Yeah. So one angle that your website brings up is that our neighbors to the west, British Columbia, produce far, far more coal than Alberta does.
They sure do. They are blessed with high quality metallurgical coal as well. And the deposits are very similar, and it's one of the top 5 in the world. So it is a very high quality burning coal for making steel. And they're just on the other side of the continental divide here, and they can do it responsibly. And they've shown that. And of course, they're always improving technologies. And there's no reason why in Alberta we can't be benefiting from this as well. With, again, like Carmen stated, with the technology, the modern mining techniques, the regulations, we can get that high quality metallurgical coal out of the ground.
So what about concerns that coal mining could negatively affect tourism, like the landscape and the wildlife, or is that not a concern at all?
Well, where it sits right now is unabandoned coal mines. So nobody's using, well, it's private property actually. So, I mean, nobody's recreating up there. It's definitely needs to be cleaned up. So, we have an abundance of trails, and we have a ski hill. There's a park just to the south of us, and
there's no reason they can't coexist. And again, we mentioned the infrastructure in the Crow's Nest Pass is a little bit lacking, where we think this is a huge opportunity for a company to come in and build this, but then not only that, build the infrastructure to support things like tourism. We love having people come and visit our community. We have for many years. I've lived here my whole life, but we need more of that infrastructure in place to support the more people coming. And unfortunately, it's lacking and it's very expensive to implement. So we need that community support. They need to coexist. There needs to be a balance to other industry like tourism and this mine.
So to any degree, would there be dust and noise impacting the surrounding communities, do you think?
well, again, I think that goes back to the rules and regulations that the government sets out, that they have to abide by certain standards, dust, noise, environmental, and if they don't do it, then they get shut down. So
Yeah, exactly.
yeah.
So what do you say to those who might be concerned about land reclamation?
So I think this is a real big opportunity to actually fix a wrong that happened 50 to 60 years ago. I think with modern mining techniques and modern environmental practices and reclamation practices, this could be a real positive. At the end of the day, we believe, or we've been advised, that they will reclaim land as they disrupt it, and it's already disrupted. So this could be a real positive. And then as well, so it's shown that some of the best wildlife and recreation areas are on previously mined or used industrial sites. So we're actually excited that at the end of this mine, we'll have an area that is really good for recreating and for wildlife.
You look at what they're doing up in northern Alberta. I mean, they're bringing bison back, and it's beautiful. You can't even tell that it was a reclaimed site. So
Wow. No, that's interesting. I think it's important to know also what kind of support you're getting from the residents of Crow's Nest Pass and the surrounding communities. So what is that looking like?
So I do the markets every week, the farmers markets. I have a little booth there, and I can say personally that there is overwhelming support in the Crow's Nest Pass. I did a trade show in Pincher Creek last weekend before, and we were surprised about the amount of support that we had there as well. It was mostly positive. Like, there's a couple people that are nervous about the mine coming in or a drilling program, but yeah, overwhelmingly supportive for sure.
Okay. And are you also getting support from municipal and provincial politicians?
Our municipal government is supportive of a responsible mine, and we hope that our provincial government is the same.
Okay. If any viewers wanted to join in with your vision, how would they go about doing that?
So you could go onto our website. We encourage you to check it out. It's crowsnestcoal.org. You can sign up on there and receive our emails, newsletters, updates, and yeah, if you would like to become an active member in our group, send us an email and we'll be in contact.
All right. So what's the next step then for you guys as far as moving forward with this?
Well, we're just going to keep on supporting the process, and hopefully we'll get an outcome of a responsible metallurgical coal mine.
One of the biggest pieces is getting the accurate information out, which is readily available. There's on our website, there is a lot of really good information out there. So we encourage people, and many of the people we saw in Pincher Creek, they were unsure, but they wanted more information, which was really encouraging. So we advise the same, like get informed about it from good information sources, and we're going to be there trying to support this in our communities and with government and doing interviews like this. That's why we appreciate it.
Not many people know that it's a old abandoned coal mine. Not many people know the difference between metallurgical coal and thermal coal as well. So it's important to know those differences.
True. Information and education are the key to that. Absolutely. You mentioned that it's on private property. Do you know the owner? Have you talked to them about sort of purchasing that or working with them for this?
Well, the owner of the property is Northback. They own that property. Our group supports any industry that wants to come to the Crow's Nest Pass because we truly believe we need it, and they've given us the opportunity to go up for tours and stuff and see what it's really like up there.
Okay. Have they actually started the process yet, or are you just kind of in a holding pattern right now, waiting?
We're waiting. The Northback's waiting on a drilling program. Exploration program.
Okay. And do you have to sort of get the green flag then, or the green light from the province?
From the Alberta Energy Regulator, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. Well, thanks so much for being with us today, Carmen and Troy. Very interesting conversation there.
Thank you so much for having us.
Carmen and Troy Linderman are part of Citizens Supportive of Crow's Nest Coal. Great to have you on today. I'm Jeanette Roche on behalf of all of us here at Bridge City News. Thanks so much for watching.